Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the December DAR Leadership Training Committee webinar, Motions, Improving Your Leadership Moves. The DAR Leadership Training Committee provides informative webinars for all our members. I am Donna Ellen, National Chairman, and with us are Jean Ellen Mountain and Susan Thomas, our webinar's Vice Chairman. Today we have a special guest, Carol Belcher, National Parliamentarian of the National Society, who will present and answer your questions. Carol, thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you, Donna. I am pleased to be here and looking forward to discussing the basic motions that chapter leaders can use to efficiently conduct their chapter meetings. We hope that the audience will have some questions for us to discuss after the opening presentation.
Great, thank you. Let's begin.
Welcome to Motions, Improving Your Leadership Moves. In this webinar, we will discuss the basic building blocks of parliamentary procedure. Parliamentary procedure is a vast and complicated field of study for those who choose to become professionally registered parliamentarians. This webinar will attempt only to scratch the surface of this field by focusing on the key motions designed to help your meetings run smoothly. After this webinar, you will understand the role of parliamentary procedure in a business meeting and be familiar with how to make a motion and how to act upon that motion. At the end of the webinar, we will share resources to help you find more information about motions and parliamentary procedure. Let's begin with a poll about your understanding of motions. What is your experience with motions in parliamentary procedure? Do you have no exposure, some exposure, feel pretty confident, or feel excellent about your experience? We'll keep the poll open for 30 seconds for you to record your experience.
This is Jean Ellen. The poll is now open. Please use your mouse to select your answer. The poll will be open for about 20 more seconds. You have 10 seconds remaining to make your choice. And the poll will now close. So it looks like the majority of you have some experience using motions, but may not be quite comfortable just yet.
Great! By the end of today's webinar, we hope you will all feel more comfortable handling motions in your chapter. Imagine for a moment your worst-case scenario DAR meeting. Imagine one with no agenda and no sense of order. Perhaps many conversations take place simultaneously, and no one knows how to make a group decision. You leave the meeting with a headache, uncertain if anything was accomplished. Now, imagine the solution to that chaotic meeting. Since 1876, Henry Roberts' Rules of Order have guided decision-making in community organizations like the DAR. The current edition of Roberts' Rules of Order, newly revised, the 11th edition, was published in 2011. A basic building block of parliamentary procedure is a motion. What is a motion? A motion is a formal proposal by a member to cause the group to take action. There are two classes of motions. The first, a main motion, brings business before the group. The second class of motions are called secondary motions. These motions help the meeting run more smoothly. Before we discuss the steps to a main motion, let's take another poll. How do you introduce a motion? Option 1, Madam Regent, I move to. Option 2, I would like to make a motion. Option 3, Madam Regent, I call for a motion. Option 4, Madam Regent, I make a motion to. This poll will be open 30 seconds for you to enter your response.
This is Jean Ellen again. The poll is now open. Use your mouse to select your answer. The poll will be open for about 20 more seconds. You have 10 seconds remaining to record your vote if you haven't done so. And the poll will now be closed. The majority of you chose option 4, but it looks like we're pretty evenly split between options 1 and 4.
While you may have heard all of these options used in a chapter meeting, the correct answer is the first one. After being recognized by the chair, you should begin your motion by saying, "Madam Regent, I move to." Now, let's look at the steps to a main motion. There are 8 steps involved to make and vote on a motion. Step 1. A member seeks recognition by the chair. Step 2. That member is recognized by the chair. Step 3. The member states her motion. Step 4. Another member seconds the motion. Step 5. The chair restates the motion. Step 6. Members discuss and debate the motion. Step 7. The chair takes the vote. Step 8. The chair explains the results of the vote. Let's look at these steps more closely using an example you might hear in a chapter meeting. First, the member who would like to make a motion seeks recognition by the chair. Then, the member is recognized by the chair, and the member may then state her motion using the language we discussed on the last slide. In the fourth step, another member seconds the motion. The seconding member does not need to be in favor of the motion, but she should believe that the motion should be brought before the assembly for discussion. Once the motion has been stated and seconded, the chair states the motion and the recording secretary records the motion exactly as it is worded, or the meaning of the motion may be misunderstood. If the maker of the motion is having difficulty wording the motion, it is perfectly acceptable for the chair to suggest wording. Then, the chair asks for discussion. There might not be any discussion on the motion, but if there is, here are a few simple guidelines to maintain order. Any discussion during this part of the meeting should be relevant to the motion. Using our example, discussion should be related to the chapter support of the DAR Museum Adopt an Object program, and not a program on junior membership. The maker of the motion has the right to discuss the motion first. If more than a few people wish to discuss the motion, alternate speakers, pro and con. Those of you at Continental Congress this year observed the President General alternate between pro and con during discussion on changes to the national bylaws. Using this method allows both sides equal time. Guide discussion about the motion through secondary motions. Keep in mind that Robert's Rules of Order establishes a 10-minute time limit to discussion. Your chapter standing rules may establish a different time limit. Ask your chapter parliamentarian to check this for you. Following all discussion, the chair takes the vote. Generally, a voice vote is sufficient. In the case of a close vote, though, it may be helpful to ask for a show of hands or a rising vote, so that every vote can be equally counted. Once the vote has been taken, the chair explains the results to the chapter. It's poll time again. Speaking of taking the vote, how many votes are necessary to pass a motion? Option 1, the majority of the chapter membership. Option 2, 2/3 of the members casting a vote. Option 3, a majority of the members casting a vote. Option 4, other. We will keep this poll open for 30 seconds for you to record your vote.
Hi everyone, this is Jean Ellen again. The poll is now open. You may use your mouse to select your answer. The poll will remain open for about 20 more seconds. You have 10 seconds remaining to record your answer. And the poll is now closed. The majority of you chose option 3, a majority of members casting a vote. Let's find out the answer.
This is a bit of a trick question. The issue voted on, as well as the amount of notice given to your membership, determines the number of votes needed. Let's look at this more closely. The number of votes required to pass or adopt a motion depends on several variables. First, motions not involving bylaws or constitutional changes require a majority of the votes cast to pass. If the motion does involve bylaws or constitutional changes, and the membership has been given previous notice, it requires 2/3 of the votes cast to pass. If the membership has not been given notice of this type of motion, the vote requires approval of the majority of the membership to pass. The second class of motions is called secondary motions. Secondary motions are used to change or guide the discussion about the main motion. If there is no discussion about the main motion, there will be no secondary motions. There are 3 kinds of secondary motions. Subsidiary motions relate directly to the main motion. Privileged motions concern matters of importance or urgency. Finally, incidental motions deal with questions of procedure. Subsidiary motions are those used most often during meetings. Subsidiary motions must relate directly to the main motion and must be settled by vote before you can take a final vote on the main motion. On the next slides, we will list the 7 subsidiary motions and briefly describe the most commonly used. The first subsidiary motion is the motion to postpone indefinitely. This motion avoids direct vote on a motion. The second motion is the motion to amend. This modifies the wording of the motion. The next motion is that to commit or refer, which refers the motion to committee for further review. The fourth is to postpone to a certain time. You may postpone action on a pending question to a definite day, meeting, or hour, but not after the next regular meeting. The fifth subsidiary motion is the motion to limit or extend the limits of debate. This motion affects a change in your adopted rules for debate, such as defining the total time allotted for discussion or limiting the number of times a member may speak. The next motion is that of the previous question. This motion stops debate and brings the Assembly to an immediate vote on one or more pending questions. The final subsidiary motion is to lay on the table. This permits the Assembly to lay the pending question aside temporarily when something of immediate urgency has arisen. Let's take another poll using some of the subsidiary motions. What is the best way to dispose of a motion you would rather not bring to a vote? Option 1, move to lay the motion on the table. Option 2, move to postpone indefinitely. Option 3, just ignore the motion and hope the members forget about it. This poll will be open 30 seconds for you to record your vote.
This is Jean Ellen. The poll is now open, so you may use your mouse to select your answer. The poll will be open for about 20 more seconds. You have 10 seconds remaining to cast your vote. And the poll is now closed. It looks like the majority of you selected move to postpone indefinitely. Let's find out the correct answer.
The correct answer in this situation is to use the motion to postpone indefinitely. An issue that has been laid on the table must be taken off the table at the current or next business meeting, while an issue postponed indefinitely will not be brought back before the membership. Let's look at examples using subsidiary motions. First, let's look at the motion to amend. What does it mean to amend? A member may feel that the main motion might be better with an addition or subtraction and will move to amend the motion by striking, inserting, or adding language. As you can see in this example, Member Julie has suggested an amendment to our motion by striking part of the motion and adding new language. She states, I move to amend the motion by striking, quote, a DAR museum object, end quote, and inserting, quote, a miniature portrait from the DAR Museum Adopt an Object program, end quote. While you may also amend an amendment, you may not have more than one motion to amend an amendment on the floor at any given time. If there is a motion to amend an amendment, that motion must be settled by vote before voting on the amendment to the main motion. Keeping with our example, discussion of the motion might suggest to the chapter members that more research is necessary into the Adopt an Object program and chapter funds available to address the motion. At this point, it might be helpful to refer the issue to the chapter's Finance Committee for more study. This motion must be seconded. The motion to lay on the table is a temporary response to an immediate need, like the arrival of your lunch or the speaker's need to leave the meeting by a certain time. In this example, a waitress interrupts a meeting to take orders for lunch. Rather than making her wait, use this motion to set your business aside until she is finished. The motion to postpone to a certain time may be used when you know at what point you will be willing to take up discussion on a motion. For example, what should you do if a speaker is going to be late? Continue with your business meeting until the speaker arrives. Then, when the speaker arrives, postpone your discussion to a set time later in the current meeting or to the following business meeting. Once recognized by the chair, a member states, our speaker, the mayor, was running late due to the weather, but she has now arrived. Therefore, I move to postpone the motion until later in the meeting. You may not postpone the question beyond the next business meeting. A motion to postpone indefinitely avoids a direct vote on the main motion. This motion may be debated, and the debate may address the main question. Despite its name, this motion is not to postpone discussion on the motion, but instead is used to suppress or kill a pending main motion. Your chapter might use this motion to dispose of a difficult or sensitive issue. Here is a recap of subsidiary motions. For example, if you need to change the wording of a motion, use the motion to amend. If you need to end debate on the motion and vote now, use the previous question. This quick reference guide will be available to you in the archived webinar to use as a resource. Remember, you can only vote on the main motion when all subsidiary motions have been decided. The second kind of secondary motions are called privileged motions. These motions are not directly related to the main motion, but concern matters of importance or urgency. You will find privileged motions useful in guiding your discussion and maintaining order. Privileged motions should be dealt with as they are brought up and must be disposed of before subsidiary motions or a main motion. Here are the 5 privileged motions. First, call for the orders of the day, a requirement to conform to the agenda. This is a particularly useful motion if discussion strays into areas of conversation that aren't related to the business you hope to address in a meeting. Second, raise a question of privilege, a request relating to the rights of the assembly or member. This motion may be used when the speaker cannot be heard, or when the temperature in the room is too warm or cool. Third, recess. A recess or break in the meeting for chapter members is usually worked into the agenda. If not, a motion to recess may be made. Fourth, adjourn. If business for the meeting is concluded, a motion to adjourn is not necessary, but it may be necessary to adjourn prior to the completion of the agenda. Use this motion in that occasion. Fifth, fix the time to which to adjourn. This motion sets the time for another meeting to continue business of the current meeting. The adjourned meeting must occur before the next regular meeting. Before we look at an example of a privileged motion that you are likely to hear in a chapter meeting, let's take another poll. Do privileged motions require a second? Yes, no, sometimes, but not always. We will keep the poll open 30 seconds for you to record your vote.
This is Jean Ellen again. The poll is now open. Use your mouse to select the answer. The poll will remain open for 20 more seconds. You have 10 seconds remaining to select your choice. And the poll is now closed. It looks like the majority of you chose sometimes, but not always. But this was a close one. Let's find out the correct answer.
The subsidiary motions we discussed before generally do need a second, but privileged motions generally do not. Your chapter parliamentarian will guide you on this, and a chapter regent might make note of these in her agenda so she is not caught off guard. A question of privilege is an example of a privileged motion that does not require a second. This motion is used when something, a disturbance in the hallway for example, distracts members from the discussion or debate. To use this motion, start with the following statement. Madam Regent, I rise to a question of privilege affecting the Assembly. And then explain the concern. In this example, Member 1 goes on to say, there is a loud disturbance coming from the hall, and a large number of us cannot hear or concentrate on the discussion. In this case, it is acceptable to speak without recognition by your chapter regent. She should immediately call for a solution. The third kind of secondary motions are called incidental motions. These motions are incidental to the main motion and deal with questions of procedure. Incidental motions arise incidentally out of the immediately pending business. They must be decided immediately, before business can proceed. There are 11 incidental motions listed here, but you may be most likely to hear or want to use the motions of point of order, suspend the rules, consideration by paragraph, motions relating to methods of voting or motions relating to nominations, and requests and inquiries. The incidental motion you are most likely to hear or want to use in a chapter meeting is the point of order. Any member who feels the rules are not being followed may rise to a point of order. Sometimes in the course of debate on an issue, the discussion gets off topic. In this example, Member Mary uses the point of order motion to get things back on track. Mary must be recognized by the chapter regent and explains her concern in the motion by saying, "I make the point of order that the speaker is not speaking to the motion." This motion does not need a second, as the regent immediately asks for a solution to the concern. Another incidental motion you may wish to use in a chapter meeting is the request to withdraw or modify a motion. Only the member who initially made the motion may move to withdraw. Before we finish our webinar, let's take another poll and see what you've learned. To make a motion or get permission to speak, a member, A, should raise her hand. B, must be recognized by the chair. C, should be prepared to state her issue or motion. D, A and C only. Or E, all of the above. We will keep the poll open 30 seconds for you to record your vote.
This is Jean Ellen. The poll is now open, so please use your mouse to select your answer. The poll will remain open for 20 more seconds. You have 10 seconds remaining to select your choice. And the poll will now close. It looks like almost all of you chose option E, all of the above. Let's find out the correct answer.
In addition to option B, that a member must be recognized by the chair, options A and C are also correct. Raise your hand to seek recognition and be prepared with your motion or statement. Before we conclude the webinar, we would like to provide you a few tips on using motions in a meeting, review what you have learned, and share with you some resources for further study. Plan your agenda ahead of time and include any known motions. Write out the entire script as if the motion were to pass or not pass. Make note in your agenda of anticipated motions. Do they require a second? Will you ask for a vote or issue a ruling as with an incidental motion? Use motion cards to be sure motions voted on is the motion the maker intended. Once completed, give the card to your recording secretary to be sure the minutes are correct. If debate on a question grinds your meeting to a halt, postpone the issue to your next meeting and proceed with your agenda. If you need immediate parliamentary assistance, call for a recess and phone a friend, your state parliamentarian, for example, or refer to the NSDAR Handbook or Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised. Parliamentary procedure is designed to help your chapter meetings run smoothly and efficiently. If this isn't the case for your chapter meeting, ask your chapter parliamentarian how to help you get back on track. After today's webinar, we hope that you understand the role of parliamentary procedure in a meeting, are familiar with how to make a main motion and how to change that motion using subsidiary motions, and know where to find more information about how to use motions in your chapter meetings. If you would like to learn more, or if you have questions, please refer to the resources on the following slide. Each of the resources on this slide will assist you in learning more about parliamentary procedure and how to run your chapter meetings effectively. Refer to the National Handbook and Robert's Rules of Order. Ask your chapter, state, or national parliamentarian when you aren't sure how to proceed. You may wish to study parliamentary procedure to become a better leader or officer. Classes are available throughout the country. Contact the National Association of Parliamentarians to learn more about classes in your area.
Okay, well, before we end our session, this is Donna. Our national parliamentarian, Carol Belcher, is here to answer a few of your questions. Hi, Carol. Are you there?
Hi, I am here. Hi, Donna and participants.
Hi. Well, we have received several questions prior to today's webinar, and we hope that you can answer some of them today.
I look forward to answering the questions from our audience.
Great. Well, the first question was, a member of my chapter, quote, calls for the question, quote, which motion is this?
This sounds like a case of using the motion for the previous question. Vote first on the motion to end debate. If that is adopted, then vote on the main motion.
Okay. Thank you. Question 2. Must debate on a motion stop immediately as soon as any member calls the question?
This is a fairly common misconception that after debate has continued for some time, if any member shouts out, "I call the question," debate must immediately cease and the chair must put the pending question to a vote. This is not the case. Any member who wishes to force an end to debate must first obtain the floor by being duly recognized to speak by the chair and must then move the previous question. Such a motion must be seconded and then adopted by a 2/3 vote or by unanimous consent.
Great. Thanks, Carol. I think that that question is brought up a lot, and I think that a lot of people do believe that it ends debate. So that was informative for me. And I think, again, it also shows that, again, our members also need to understand parliamentary procedure and the motions, and that they need to be recognized by the chair and then also understand what the motion is that they're going to present. Thank you. The question 3 that we got, this question comes from a chapter regent. She says, sometimes I forget to ask for a second before discussion begins. Should I go back and ask for one?
Well, remember that a member seconds a motion because she believes it should be brought forward for discussion. If discussion has begun and multiple people are willing to discuss the issue, the second is implied. Continue with discussion and don't worry about the second, because also remember we do not record a seconding member's name in our minutes.
Great. That's a good question. Thank you. The next question we received, in determining the result of a vote, what constitutes a majority?
The word majority actually only means more than half.
Okay, that's easy enough. Well, Carol, we received a few questions online, and I think that during the webinar, and I think that we can go ahead and answer those. The first one we got was from a member in the Northeast, and she writes, would NSDAR recommend that state regents and national DAR leaders get the basic certification from the National Association of Parliamentarians through the online training?
Well, there is a 300-question test that you can get from parliamentarians.org, and then you can online take that test now. And when you get that test, it has 100 questions. I'm not sure NSDAR would completely say you have to do it, but it could be recommended. And I myself, when I was going to become a state regent, made sure that I had taken that test and passed it before I became state regent.
Okay. Yeah, always a good recommendation to understand those, and if all chapter regents could do it, that'd be great too. But like you said,
Absolutely.
It's an option out there. Okay, I think Jane had a question, but we answered it during the program. But I'm going to go ahead and ask it. She said, if discussion lasts longer than 10 minutes, or is it obvious that more discussion is needed, what is done? And I think that we both agreed that that's when you use the motion to limit or extend limits of debate.
That's right, and that motion does take a 2/3 vote to limit or extend the limits of debate. So somebody can make a motion to extend the time for debate, but that will take a 2/3 vote.
Okay. This is another question that was interesting from Jill. She says, you have yay and nay, but how many abstain? I can't tell you the number of times we use abstain, or it was never noted.
An abstention is not a vote, and so abstentions are never counted or taken. It's only aye or no.
Okay, so if there were 20 members that could actually vote, but only 10 participated in the vote, this is the 10 that you include.
That's right. You would, if there were 6 that voted aye, 4 that voted no, then you have a majority, and that would be the vote would have passed. Doesn't matter that there are 10 that didn't vote.
Okay. This is a good question from Kathy. She asked, does every chapter need to designate a parliamentarian?
It's very helpful if you do designate a parliamentarian, but it's more helpful if that parliamentarian has some knowledge of Robert's rules.
Okay. Okay. And then this goes back, I think, to our webinar, and this is from Anne. She says, am I to understand that no motion is needed to adjourn a meeting if all business is complete? And then the second part of it, go ahead.
That is absolutely correct. If all the business is complete, then all you have to say is if there is no further business to become before the chapter, the meeting is adjourned.
And then that does not need a second, is that right?
Does not. There is no motion. That's just adjourning the meeting.
Okay, Phyllis, she said this is a question for Donna Ellen. And actually, I think Leanne might be on the call too. So Leanne, this is also for you. She says, I have attended most of the webinars this year. How can we use the participation on the master questionnaire? Which I think is actually a good question. So Phyllis, I'll wait till Leanne gets back with us on that, and we'll get back to you on that. Okay, well, we'll do a few more since we're coming up about 1/4 to the hour. These are all great questions, by the way. So Carol, Teresa asked, would the parliamentarian guide the steps of the meeting or the regent? I guess, or would the regent do that?
The regent would guide the steps of the meeting. It's good to have an agenda to follow, and it's also, if you have a helpful parliamentarian, it would be good for her to check your agenda before the meeting, because sometimes she can just give you a few hints to move the meeting along faster.
Okay. And then Deborah asks, can a parliamentarian, can you have a parliamentarian that is not a DAR member?
Absolutely. Okay,
and then we'll just take 2 more. I think this is Joan. How do you go about, I think the question is, how do you go about getting the training for knowing the proper test for parliamentarians? So I think it was that parliamentarian.org?
Yes, parliamentarians.org.
Okay. And then the last question from Lolita, did you say that you do not record the seconding member's name in the minutes?
That is correct.
Okay.
The seconding member's name is not recorded. This was a change quite a few years ago by Robert's Rules. It probably was, I think maybe even the 9th edition, which came out in 1990. So, yeah, it's been quite a while that they have not been recording the seconder's name.
Okay. Very helpful. Well, thanks, Carol. This is so helpful and interesting to all of us. Is there anything that you might to add to help our chapter regents?
Well, I think probably the best thing is to study your Robert's Rules. If you get the little book called Robert's Rules in Brief, that book can give you pretty much all the guidance that a chapter regent would need. And of course, I'm always available if you have questions.
Well, thanks again, Carol. And for those on the phone, again, if you have any questions, contact Carol at cbelcher@dar.org. And we hope that all of you have learned something new about parliamentary procedure today, and you will be able to use this information to run your meetings more smoothly. For more information or to hear this webinar later, you can go to our website at members.dar.org, look for the DAR Leadership Training under the Committees section, and then click Webinar Archive. This time, in the Archive section, you will see where it says for the motions, you will see a few slides that we discussed today in a separate file, such as the summary of subsidiary motions. You can print these off and use them for your personal region or officer's toolkit. And also, for those who have texted us questions that we didn't answer, we will answer those via email and include them in the webinar script posted in our archive. Next month, mark your calendars, we will revisit our series about webinars from volunteer genies. Judy Mason, National Chairman of the Volunteer Genealogist Committee, will be with us for that webinar. The target audience is chapter and state regents, chapter and state registrars, members of the Chapter Membership Committee, and members of the State CDR Commission. But as always, all members and officers will benefit. So please check the members' website for registration details. Again, thanks to Carol, thanks to all of you who are participated, to our presenter, Jean Ellen. Thank you, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and we will see you all in 2013.